Hey everyone, and welcome back to Timeless. Today, we gotta talk about the big black deck. I've been having a huge amount of success with this deck. I have something like an 80 win rate with it, even though we're still working on it and I'm actively making changes as I play, which is really crazy. So, I got a lot to talk about. Long deck tech today, so there's timestamps if you do want to skip right to the gameplay. So, this deck is super interesting to me because before MH3 came out, my main deck that I played was Fair Dark Ritual, which had a lot of the same core cards as this deck. Obviously, cards like Grief had not been printed yet, but what we did have was Dark Ritual combined with Shieldred and the One Ring, which, in my opinion, are some of the best Dark Ritual targets in the format and some of the best fair cards to play in your Dark Ritual deck. And of course, that deck was also propped up by Bowmaster's Thoughtseize and those sorts of cards. Now, that deck fell out of favor hugely after MH3 dropped, and I tried updating it at the time, and I didn't have too much success. Now, the meta has settled a lot since then. Like, the meta is not solved, in my opinion. The timeless player base is, like, too small to, like, fully solve the meta game, in my opinion. But the meta is really stable at this point. So it's possible to revisit this old idea and say, well, how do we take this idea and we beat both energy and show and tell? The reason that this deck had a lot of success, like back before MH3 when I played it a lot, was because the meta then was really warped around show and tell, and people were either playing like show and tell, they were playing blue black control, hard control to disrupt that, or they were like playing Jund mid range. This deck will absolutely dumpster Jund. This deck has way too much degeneracy in it for blue black control before mana drain to possibly answer. Like you would just like mulligan for your Thoughtseizes and Dark Rituals against that deck, and then you would just do some bullshit like a turn 2 ring, and they really couldn't recover against that. And even back then, show and tell was very good, but I was looking at some old show and tell lists, and those lists were, because I was curious how this beat show and tell back then, because I remembered having a good show and tell matchup, which is not the case anymore. And those decks were very linear. They didn't have a lot of the current technology. They also didn't have access to powerful cards like, Mana Drain, Hullbreaker, Horror, which definitely helped them against you, right? So those decks were very linear, and it was easier to beat like those infancy show and tell decks just by packing a bunch of discard. So fast forward to like 2 weeks ago, we have our metagame challenge, and Greenwire took a list pretty similar to this one that we're looking at right now to a 7-0. I started with his list when I started working on this and making my own changes, so I honestly don't remember what is originally his and what was my additions, but he had absolutely the core of Shieldred, Dark Ritual, One Ring, combined with the Grief Scam package and probably these interactive spells, something close to it, and probably Bowmasters as well, and the Demonic Tutor were his. But then I was goofing around with the deck one day. I played against a Psychic Frog opponent, and like turn 1, I thought seized their Psychic Frog. Turn 2, I reanimated it, or maybe it was turn 3 or 4 by then. I don't know. But the moral of the story is that frog absolutely took over the freaking game because my opponent did not have a removal spell for it. And I said, wow, wouldn't it be lovely if this deck could run Psychic Frog? And I wasn't the only person to have that idea that day, because a couple of the other guys in Discord also had the idea of, hey, what if we made it a fair Necro deck? And one of the cards you could put in that is Psychic Frog. So I have been of the opinion that you shouldn't play Necropotence in a fair deck like this. Like I tried it a lot way back then, and in my opinion, the One Ring just works so much better, and I don't think you need 8 whole card advantage sources. I think we're fine with just the One Ring, but some of the other guys messed around with Necro. I am a One Ring believer, though, so I said, all right, guys, I'm going to try Psychic Frog in my mono black deck, because this did not have the blue mana in it before. What it did have was fetch lands. It was a mono black deck with fetch lands, and it was just fetching to surveil, which I think is super interesting, and it's really important to be able to surveil with this deck, because sometimes you're taking turns off. Sometimes you have some extra mana hanging around. And the mana base, just to touch on it really quick, a little sus, isn't it? It definitely looks a little bit sus. We only have 15 lands here in the land column, but you got to keep in mind we have 7 lands here. They're either MDFCs, so 3 MDFCs, and 4 Trolls, which essentially count as tap lands. So including the tap lands, we have 22, and including Dark Rituals and Mana Source, we have 26. So that's actually a lot of mana sources for 15 lands. Anyway, back on the train of thought. So you guys immediately started experimenting with it. I've seen a lot of different builds from different people in Discord, and they all have merit, and a lot of them are quite different from what I have. Like, you could imagine a version that has four Necros, both Necropotence and Necrodominance. Eight Necros, that would be, actually. And not playing the One Ring. Like, I've seen quite a bit of variation. A lot of people have said to me that turn one Necro is just too powerful, but like, I disagree. I really think that turn one Thoughtseize followed by turn two Dark Ritual One Ring is even better. Um, at least against some decks, right? The One Ring is very, very strong against energy and fair decks in the format, but the One Ring is very, very weak against show and tell and unfair decks in the format. I had the displeasure of playing against Mono Blue Belcher, and they commandeered my One Ring before I sideboarded it out, and that was not a fun gameplay experience. I got to tell you that. I think we did steal game three from them and end up winning that BO3, but getting my One Ring commandeered, woof, that was rough. And again, against a deck like Show and Tell, the last thing you want to do is just spend 4 mana on a One Ring. You want to be as disruptive as possible. So we do have a sideboard plan for that, but let's go over the rest of the main deck really quickly. Let's go over every card that I've picked. There are some obviously ones like Shieldred One Ring that we've gone over before. We have Grief Reanimate, and Troll goes very well with it. Troll, I've said this before, like when I was trying to update my blacklist to post MH3 and kind of failed at the time. I said that Troll is outdated technology, and I gotta agree. But it's really only outdated technology when you're playing against another creature deck. When you're up against Show and Tell, cycling a Troll and reanimating it on turn two, or sometimes even turn one, you can go turn one, Dark Ritual, Foot sees you, cycle Troll, reanimate. Sometimes it's really funny as he thought sees them take their attacks and reanimate it. That kind of bullshit still does work against Show and Tell. So we're happy to have it in the deck, but against energy, you are never ever going to reanimate your own Troll and pay 6 life for a stupid creature that attacks and blocks. It's absolutely not worth it, but against a deck like Show and Tell, yeah, it's a 3-turn clock. That's pretty crazy if you're going to like throw in a discard spell alongside it. For our interaction, just like the standard 1 mana interaction, we're a 3-3 split of Thoughtseize Push. I feel like 6 1 mana interaction spells is really good, especially considering that we're playing Grief for a total of 10 0 and 1 mana interaction spells. That's exceptionally good. One of Demonic Tutor, very strong. Bowmaster's 4 of, that's a solid piece in the meta. Psychic Frog just feels incredibly, incredibly strong. This is really the best 2-drop you can ever ask for. So we are splashing blue to play only this. I have experimented with the idea of playing counter spells, especially in the sideboard with this deck, and I did not think it was worth it. I did not think it was helping with our really hard unfair matchups, but I welcome everybody else to try counter spells in the sideboard if they think that they can make it work. To splash this Psychic Frog, it's pretty free, because like I said before, in Greenwire's version of the list, he was running 2 Surveil lands, just to surveil. So all that the Psychic Frog really costs in terms of deck building is 1 Watery Grave. Just one more blue source that I can fetch up untapped to play my Frog if needed. Frog is not something you have to play on turn 2. It is something that you often will wait to play because you want to be able to remove all of your opponent's interaction, all of their removal spells, by either discarding them or playing like a Bowmaster and having that take the fatal push. You want to wait until your Frog is guaranteed to stick around before you go ahead and play him. And this is just, it's been a crazy strong 2-drop. It's a 2-drop that can end games. It's a 2-drop that can draw cards, dig you to your answers. It's a 2-drop that can grow. It can win combat. It's absolutely crazy. It's an incredibly strong card, and it's like really what's making the deck click for me. Midrage Massacre is a really sweet one. This, in my opinion, for this deck at least, might be the best board wipe against energy, because keep in mind, this deck makes a lot of mana really, really well, so we could pay the X cost. But what the best part of this card is that energy's best card, well, it's hard to say energy is the best card, right? The energy's unexpected best card is Goblin Bombardment. Like, that card is a little messed up, and that card gives them a lot of reach, especially if you do something like, oh, I play a Shieldred that can block all your creatures and gum up the board. Eventually, they're just going to play a Bombardment and, like, ping you 10 times. This makes you gain a life every time a creature dies. So it gets rid of their Bombardment reach. It also just passively gains you a lot of life over the course of the game. It gains you life the turn it comes down. It is really, really strong, and you're often able to pay a big X cost because, well, you have fast mana like Ritual, and oftentimes you hide behind your One Ring. You cast One Ring, you gain protection for a turn, your opponent continues to build up their board, but you gain access to more mana because you can make a land drop on the turn after you play the One Ring, right? And if you chain two rings together, you'll have 6 mana theoretically. If you spent 4 mana off of lands for the rings, you'll untap with 6 mana, which means you can do an X equal 4 meat hook and absolutely wipe almost any board that you'll encounter from an aggro deck. So that's really interesting. Of course, that's also sometimes too slow against energy, which is why we have sideboard cards. Overlord of the Bilmerk. This is a card that has really overperformed. It was not on my radar in earlier iterations of the deck, but like one of the first decks I actually lost to playing this was a really greedy like Sultai midrange deck playing like Uro, and they played this, and I'm like, oh wow, this actually works really well because we're a reanimate deck. We're happy to fill our graveyard. We could also do something fun like if we don't have the scam effect for grief, we can just evoke it turn 1 anyway, and then turn 2 play Bilmerk for the impending cost and buy the grief back to our hand. Bilmerk has a lot of really good play patterns. It is also just a card that is really messed up if you Dark Ritual it out early and you just get that 5/5 that has the ETB, and it's going to get that ETB again every time it attacks. Like, that's very strong. I've been very impressed with this as a Dark Ritual target. I think it's a really good card for the deck. If you don't have this Mythic, because some other people ask me on Discord, you don't have to play this card. It's not critical. You can play another threat or another piece of interaction in the slot. But I do think it's performing really well, really well. I was thinking about even increasing on copies. I'm not sure. Like, you could theoretically decrease Shieldreds and increase Bilmerks, go to 3. I don't have 4. So if you love Bilmerk, feel free to experiment with 3 or 4 copies. Let me know how it goes. Mana base, we did go over that. Urborg, that's cool. One of the cool things about Urborg is that it lets your fetch lands tap for mana painlessly, so you don't actually have to fetch a basic swamp. Also, just like one tricky part of this deck is we only have 5 fetchables, and we have Troll as an extra like set of fetch lands, so it is very possible to run out of fetchables in this deck. So do be a little bit careful of that when you're playing. I was thinking that maybe we should add the 3rd basic swamp to the deck, but I haven't quite done it yet. We play a lot of the other nice mono black lands alongside that. Takenuma, Phyrexian Tower, Castle Lockthwain. Maybe we could cut the Tower. The reason Tower is here, by the way, is because like if you evoke Grief on turn 1, you can Tower and get 2 mana off of it and have 2 mana on turn 1, combined with a ritual that's 4 mana for a ring, or it could just be like 2 mana for a Bowmasters. You know, cool stuff like that. But I might cut it because like I think I've only like used it once or twice. All right, sideboard, sideboard, sideboard. So up here we have mostly sideboard cards for fair decks and energy. So I would play more copies of Meat Hook Massacre if it didn't have like such an intense mana requirement. We're only going to play 2, even though I think it's really strong. And for additional board wipes, we're going to lean on Path of Peril and Deluge. I'm not sure which one is better. They definitely have different strengths and weaknesses. Path of Peril against a Lurrus deck, I think in a vacuum, is stronger because it does not cost life. But the cool thing about Deluge is that it can hit random 3 and 4 drops if your opponent is playing random 3 and 4 drops. It can also hit Lurrus itself. So I have both in the deck for right now. I'm not sure which is correct, so you have a strong opinion, please let me know. Consuming Corruption is another absolutely fantastic removal spell in this deck. It is something that will remove something and gain you 4 or 5 life on average. With Urborg down, it will gain you even more. Keep in mind, 5 is kind of the cap on life that it can gain you without the Urborg down because we only have 5 swamps in the deck. But yeah, listen. Gain 5, deal 5, very strong in the format. All right. Stonebrain is part of the unfair package, which we can talk about next, I guess, because we got through the basics for fair decks. We have 1 extra Fatal Push, so we can go up to 4 copies, of course. So for unfair decks, which I think are the problem for this deck, because keep in mind how the timeless rock paper scissors meta is that combo decks are very strong. Combo decks are being preyed upon by the aggro Mardu energy right now, who can play all the discard, disrupt them, and kill them really quickly. But Mardu energy is get preyed upon by like mid-rangey Boros energy playing the One Ring, and mid-rangey Boros energy is getting preyed upon by the combo decks who can just beat it. Same dynamic here, we're in the Boros energy slot. So we can beat up energy, but the combo decks are going to beat us up because we're really slow compared to them. Even though we do have the ability to be degenerate, the One Ring is too slow of a card to be playing against combo decks. And unfortunately, just like packing 8 discard spells has not been enough to beat Show and Tell for me. So here's where we're at. We sideboard in the extra Thoughtseize. We get to all 4. 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Grief, 2 Duress. That's 10 discard spells. I had different graveyard hate in the sideboard before, but I decided to add a surgical extraction. What's interesting about this card is we can bring it in against combo decks and surgical, their main combo piece or win condition, and that will slow down the game a lot and slow it down enough that we can begin to do our thing. And then, you know, gives us eventuality if you surgical something. And I'm not sure whether or not this is worth. Again, this is the experimental technology. I'm still trying to figure out the sideboard. Unfair matchups suck for us, so if you have your ideas, please let me know. We're playing Flute. Flute is a fantastic card, in my opinion. It is really good against all sorts of combo decks. It is great against like Belcher, Sorin, because you just name it with those cards on the stack. It's fantastic against opposing Necros, since we're not playing Necro. It's also good against Show and Tell. You can play this card, and Show and Tell the card then just costs 6 mana. And I think you can win the game before they put 6 mana together. Of course, your opponent can blow up the Disruptor Flute, or they can Dark Ritual out their Show and Tell, but it's buying you turns, right? Buying you turns to find more discard, buying you turns to find the Surgical Extraction. We're also trying one copy of Stonebrain. Again, this is also new. I don't know if Stonebrain can make it work, but my current idea, again, new idea, is just to try these extraction effects, both Stonebrain and Surgical. I always get afraid to put Surgical in a video because I know someone's going to pick up the Surgical and punt it. But the idea is that in a Dark Ritual deck, you could Stonebrain on turn 2. You'll play and activate it in the same turn on turn 2 if you have a Dark Ritual. So I'm pretty interested in that, right? We'll see whether or not that's good enough against Show and Tell. Any other thoughts on this deck? No, I'm happy that a lot of people are working on this in Discord. I've seen a lot of variations. I'm convinced my version is pretty good. Is it the best? Absolutely not. I haven't had enough time to play with this. We need to continue refining this. I need to have more time testing this against other very good players, both on ladder and also just like testing with some of the guys if I get a chance. So please let me know if you have any thoughts. If you do want to work on this deck, join the Discord. Get in the, what's the channel called? Black Frog with a frog emoji. Get in the Black Frog thread for this deck. Sadly, the thread is not called Big Black Deck. I'm not the one who made the thread. Should have been me, right? All right, yep. Get in Discord if you want to cook, guys. Let's get to the gameplay. All right, game 1 of the video. We are up against Bo3. They're presenting no companion. We are on the play. This hand, I think, is pretty mediocre. So a lot of things to consider when you're mulliganing with this deck, and I think mulligan skill is like tested a lot when you play this deck. Your role as a deck changes a lot based on the matchup, whether you're against aggro or combo, right? Against combo, we really need to disrupt them and then get degenerate. Against aggro, we're going to really play control. I see no companion here, right? I'm going to assume they're on a combo deck of some sort for that reason. There's very few companionless creature decks out there. Even like, and on top of that, like we have a Shieldred and a Ring, but these are bad against combo and we've no acceleration for them. So I think we're going to mulligan. We're going to look at our 6. Okay. So no combo interaction, unfortunately, but we can present a turn 2 Shieldred that hopefully an unfair deck won't be able to interact with. I think we could put the Froggy back if we don't put the Froggy back if we don't have a way to cast him. We could also put Phyrexian Tower back and then just hope that we draw a way to cast the Frog, because we have quite a few ways to tutor up a blue source. We have 7 fetch lands and some cyclers, so that's quite a bit. Definitely keeping this. Is just the question of does Frog go back or does Tower go back? I think we'll put the Frog back. And then we're going to lead on our tapped land here. Next turn, we're probably going to pay some life and then Dark Ritual out a Shieldred. And hopefully this gets under whatever my opponent does. I am inclined to believe that they're playing like Show and Tell or a combo deck. So I really want to play Shieldred here instead of playing the Ring. Against a creature deck, I'm definitely playing Ring here. Especially against a control deck, I want to play Ring here before they get Mana Drain online. But here, I think this game gets won by turning a Shieldred sideways. Now, I could be wrong about that. Maybe it's blue-white control, and this gets hit by the Swords to Plowshares, and I cry. But I think if my assumption is correct that we're against some sort of Show and Tell variant, yeah, there you go, brainstorming, so you don't have to with Shieldred in play. This Shieldred is going to kill my opponent. Alright, so we don't know exactly what they're on, but they're at least on a brainstorm pile. Oh, we get to play the ring anyway? That's so awesome. So we do need to mind Mana Drain as a card. Mana Drain, it's a real card they could have in their deck. So do we want to just jam our One Ring? Because the thing is, if we do, we're going to give them 4 mana. I'd love to have a discard spell right now, like if this Fatal Push was the Thoughtseize, as if we were sideboarded. Haha. They are getting priority, but it could be for their Delta, so it's hard to read the client here. I think I'm going to go ahead and play this anyway. I hope this is not a mistake, because this will help me find more discards and more answers if it does resolve. My opponent will not be mana draining me today, thankfully. I'm going to activate it right now in case we find Grief. We're going to pitch a Grief if we find it. Okay? Okay, cool. And good thing we didn't play this Fel the Profane because we drew a Surveil Land. Ah, and a Thoughtseize. Great, great, great. So unless they have the actual factual show and tell right here, we should be good. I think we're totally in the clear. Of course, they could just have it. Yep, they're assembling. Great. So they're going to 1 HP, by the way, because we're hitting for 4 and they lose 2 in their upkeep. But of course, if they had show and tell in hand, they'd win. But let's activate here. Take a look. Oh, what you got? What you got? What you got? What you got? You got the card. No, thank you. All right, cool. And then we'll go ahead and play out our land. So even if they draw the card show and tell again, and they show and tell attracts it into play, we can just remove it with Fel the Profane and then attack for lethal again. Sweet. All right, so against show and tell, this was our plan, right? We got to take out the obvious cards that are for aggro decks, which is going to be the Fatal Pushes. It's going to be the Meat Hook Massacre. And Bilmerk, too, is also just really slow. So I think we take him out. We're going to bring in the discard, right? Bring in that discard. I'm going to try Surgicals. I'm going to try Stone Brain. I don't know if this is 100% correct, guys. And then this brings me up to 63 cards in the deck. I said One Ring is kind of slow, so I'm tempted to cut it. It does leave me with 1 slot left. Again, I don't know if I'm overboarding, guys. Like, I'm going crazy with, like, the flutes and the discard and the extraction effects. Maybe that's too much. Maybe I should be playing my own One Ring instead of putting flute in. So it's just the question, do we want the One Ring or do we want the Bilmerk? I think we'll try a Bilmerk. And we'll see if this is the correct sideboarding plan. Again, I don't know. I've been losing a lot of games against show and tell. I asked around. Asked the guys, what do you think? How do I beat this? And the answer was, I don't know. Well, the answer is that it sucks to suck, and we're trying to play mid-range into combo, which is, like I described, sort of the natural state of this format, where mid-range will beat or will lose a vast majority of their games to combo. So I see multiple pieces of discard here and a sideboard card. I like this, but I don't see untapped mana sources. I think we're going to keep this, though. Oh, this is almost a mulligan. But we do have ways to hit our land drops. It's just that our lands are going to be tapped. It's tragic. I know. I know. But we should be able to discard them on our turn 2, and then again on our turn 3, and that should be enough. If I get, like, very lucky and I draw a Dark Ritual, then we will be able to, like, Stone Brain them even on turn 3, which would be awesome. The opponent will be... They're frogging? Oh, it's the Frog Juke show and tell. Oh, no. We actually, like, cannot answer that. Oh, it's so bad. Okay. I think what we want to do here is probably play Urborg and then double discard them. Oh, that sucks, man. I don't have answers for that frog. All right, I think we just take show and tell dig. We let them have abrupt decay. Wow, this is unfortunate. I think we're gonna next turn, by the way, cycle for basic and then play our own frog. And then we'll have 2 frogs like kind of pointing at each other like the Spider-Man meme. And hopefully it works out for us and not them. Frog is just such a crazy card, though. The total frog victory. I got banned in Legacy just yesterday? Yeah, it's Tuesday. It was just yesterday that BNR dropped. The legacy gamers were happy to be free from their frog overlord. Though in Timeless, we still love our froggy boy, I think. I like the froggy boy. He's a little too good, sure, but having fun. I at least don't think he needs to eat a restriction. You know, the bar for restrictions is very high in Timeless. And I've been of the opinion that they should really just be for a last resort. So what's curious here is that Urborg is fixing my opponent's mana. Curious, huh? Alright, there's the Froggy Boy. It hits me, they draw a card. They even discarded to accelerate. Oh, you could Surgical Show and Tell. That's a good one. We're gonna be doing that. Just one thing I gotta keep in mind. I'm playing my own frog here, right? I also want to hit my land drop. They're going to be able to give their frog 6 power on their turn. So I'm going to need 5 cards to discard to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, that's everything. So I think I need to keep my whole hand. Oh, also they had an Abrupt Decay at some point. So using Frog to block Frog isn't really optimal. That sucks. Also, the Stone Brain isn't really doing anything as it stands. I think I'm going to Surgical them real quick, just to see what's in their hand, whether or not they kept that Abrupt Decay. And then we'll jam the Frog if they didn't. We'll take Show and Tell out of the deck. Usually we should do this in draw step, but I need to inform my decision here. I need to know like whether or not they have Abrupt Decay in hand so I can play this Frog out. Oh, right, they could do that. I totally forgot about that line while I was trying to talk for the YouTube video. Let's go ahead and cycle and play our Frog then. And then we'll find an answer. There are some in our deck, notably the land. The MDFC Fell the Profane, which is something I really like having access to, as just like a land that you can tutor as a removal spell for an Atraxa or something. Yeah, they still had that. Oh well. So we might or might not die to this frog guy over here. Hopefully we draw a land so that I can play a Shieldred. Again, we're helping our opponent with their mana, just giving them a little free swamp there. Yeah, that's the good stuff. Alright, we can jam Shieldred. That's really good. I'm going to fetch up a basic here. We're going to play our Shieldred. Oh, I didn't even have to fetch a basic, right? I forgot about my good old Urborg. Forgot about my boy. Yeah, I should have actually not fetched there. It's correct to not pay the life there. So deck thinning, I guess, is an argument. Oh, now we get to have that very fun argument of whether or not thinning your deck of 1 land is worth 1 life. You guys want to like go off in Discord and have that argument one day? That would be really fun. Good old 0.1% advantage versus 0.10% advantage. Which one is better? I will present a troll, I guess. That's unfortunate that they had a frog to defend from the surgical before. Alright, Omniscience has hit the battlefield. Do they have a follow-up? Yeah, I think that Atraxa will do it for them. We could get very lucky and draw our Fel the Profane to get rid of Atraxa, but it looks like they revealed a Hullbreaker Horror among other things. Commandeer. Commandeer is good to see. So we definitely want to keep the rings out if they're playing Commandeer in the sideboard. Commandeer can steal the ring. That's messed up. We can't play against that. So we're gonna keep this. They have the frogs, man. Frogs. I can't put Fatal Push in against Show and Tell for the frogs. That's not how this works. I think we're gonna play it like this. We're going to hopefully not be super on the draw. I think our keep might have been a mistake last game, guys. We kept a 1 tap land. That's really not it. Well, we kept 3 tap lands technically if you include the trolls, but like that's not how you beat people in Timeless. Alright, we get to grief them. That's pretty good. I will go ahead and say that this is definitely worth doing. And then we get to troll them on turn 2. I think we're going to do great. Could we even do all of it, actually? I can Dark Ritual. Yeah. Oh no, I don't have enough black cards to do all of it. Troll is going to get pitched to grief here. Yeah, something needs to get pitched to grief. I think... Actually, I might even pitch Dark Ritual to grief. Yeah, hear me out, guys. We pitch Dark Ritual to Grief, because this turn we do just Grief Reanimate, and then next turn we cycle Troll and Reanimate it, and that will put a pretty quick clock on. Feels insane to pitch a Dark Ritual. But what I'm mostly interested in, more than fast mana, is getting 2 discards. If we had one other black card, we could actually do all of this on turn 1. Okay, so there's your Show and Tell and your Omniscience. I think the best thing that we could do is probably just get rid of both of them. There's maybe arguments to get rid of Brainstorm instead, but I see 2 combo pieces. The Monkey Brain says that they have to go. Just thinking, is it ever correct to grab Brainstorm instead, like we grab Brainstorm Show and Tell? No, I don't like leaving them with one combo piece, because then they could just Brainstorm find the other. Let's grab our basic here. Reanimate. If only they had an Atraxor or a Hullbreaker Horror in hand, right? That would have been messed up. That would have been like the ultimate high roll. Okay. Oh my god, another Reanimate. Funny. Alright, let's go ahead and attack here. I'm going to cycle my Troll, probably get a Watergrave. Yeah, I could just get a Swamp, right? If I draw exactly Psychic Frog, I'm going to be happy I have Watery Grave, I guess. We're going very low on life, but it's not like Show and Tell is going to be pressuring our life total. Alright, so now our opponent needs to win in the next 2 turns after being double discarded, which is not a small task. It's something they definitely can do, especially with a Brainstorm in their hand to set it up. And they're going to Brainstorm right now, main phase. Makes a lot of sense. They could do it around any of my punishing effects, and they could also sculpt their turns. So keep in mind, they had a Dig Through Time, they had a Waterlog Teachings as well. Ooh, that's pretty interesting. Unfortunately, we don't have the mana to, like, for example, mill a Grief and reanimate it. I'm still going to play this. What we could do is mill a Grief, put it back to our hand, and then just, like, evoke it. Say goodbye, reanimate. Oh, Frog. And a Shieldred. Oh my god, all the good cards, right? I guess a Frog is best right now. I don't know, the card we picked up is irrelevant. The relevant card to find there would be a Grief, just so that we could look at their hand. Shieldred, again, irrelevant, too slow. Not that it's too slow, it would kill him pretty quick. It's just not relevant right now. The only relevant cards are discard. Discard or Surgical Extraction. Surgical to hit, one of these 2 would be great. So what's cool now is if they manage to Show and Tell and Atraxa into play, we have this very cool Super Menace ability on our Troll. It means Troll is going to kill him no matter what. Looking great for us with our opponent opening with Brainstorm. So now they need Dark Ritual, Show and Tell, and the ability to go off after it. Which is probably asking too much, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. But we do know they had Dig Through Time plus Teaching, so if they do, like, assemble Omni-Tell, Dark Ritual, then they definitely have enough gas. But they need those 3 cards specifically in their hand right now. I don't think there's any other outs. And I think our sideboard plan was pretty good, because, like, if we did happen to draw a Surgical, it would be a guaranteed win. We put a lot of pressure into play very quickly, which is the idea that I had when I put those extraction effects into the deck. I'm not sure about Stonebrain, though. Stonebrain is definitely maybe too slow. Maybe we should just play 3 Surgicals. Maybe I should just not play the Stonebrain. Because, like, was Stonebrain really going to happen this match, guys? Like, you kind of need a Dark Ritual to make it work. I think my opponent gave up. I think they were trying to figure out if they had any lines, so they ran out of time. I'll do it. But hey, we beat Show and Tell, the matchup that I was super worried about. It was definitely a little sketchy at points, but I think that was a really good game 3, showcasing the sideboard strategy. All right, game 2. We are going to be on the draw against the Lurrus deck. We have a Dark Ritual, which is pretty powerful. We don't necessarily have the best interaction for playing versus Lurrus decks and energy. Do I still want to keep this over the average 7? I think I do. I think we'll go ahead and surveil on our turn 1. Turn 2, we can either like throw out a grief with a ritual, we can bowmasters. Hopefully we get to be like a luck sack and we surveil into the One Ring, and that goes ahead and carries us. Mountain Ragavan, there's my boy. Alright, so against Mountain Ragavan, I think we have to Dark Ritual out these bowmasters. Like, we can let the Ragavan hit us, but I think that is very incorrect, right, guys? Another cool thing about Bowmasters is that does turn on Phyrexian Tower, which will help us accelerate our future cards out. So I think it's going to be play Swamp, Dark Ritual, play Bowmasters, cycle Troll off of that extra mana. We'll get another basic Swamp. Not sure if this was the best keep versus what I would assume is energy, but I don't feel like throwing away somewhat functional hands. We've got another Swamp here. We can use our fetch land to grab up the dual land if we need it. Alright, my opponent appears to have their own Bowmasters. How did I know that? We're going to play Phyrexian Tower. What's really cool here, my opponent can't respond to me playing this because it's a special action, playing a land drop, and if they Bowmaster me, I'm going to put whatever they target into the tower. And I'm going to feel really smug because they're not going to get their ping. See? Look at me. I'm so smart. And I get to be the smug player. Oh, they targeted me. Hey, cheater. Fine. That's funny. Oh, they're getting rid of their Bowmasters, which is good. I don't know if they realize that I am a One Ring deck. What sucks is that I can't really use Tower for anything. I guess I can't Grief next turn because of that. That's fine. I have my Meat Hook ready. Oh, Dashing Ragavan? I'm fine. If they're just Dashing Ragavan at this point in the game instead of building a board presence, I'm okay with it. Also, I was supposed to draw that. I'm very upset that I didn't end up drawing that. Yeah, I'm very upset. Irrationally upset, one could say. Hopefully I draw another ring to make up for it. Alright, what does my opponent have here? They're holding for something. I don't know what. Okay, Thoughtseize, so I think we're just gonna Thoughtseize them. We're to turn off. Oh, that's why they're Dashing Ragavan. They have nothing going on right now. Okay. So we take Ragavan, they're gonna put Lurrus into hand predictably, and then we're gonna grief the Lurrus, and hopefully we'll find another One Ring soon. Playing against Energy, that really just becomes about finding the One Ring. That's really your winning card for the matchup. And we only have 3 copies left in the deck, unfortunately. So they are going to fetch here. Fetch, play guide, put Lurrus in a hand. I'm cool with that, honestly. So what we could do is... we could let them play Lurrus and then go for a huge Meat Hook. Good, or we could just go ahead and take the Lurrus. I think it's much safer, or safest, to go ahead and just take the Lurrus away. I have grief here. Take your Lurrus. Thank you. Hopefully they like waste their Static Prison on grief. Grief is not an important card in this matchup. It's really not accomplishing anything by being on the board. Yeah, I'm happy to have them waste that resource. I don't think that's the correct play from them. I think that needs to be saved for a high impact card that I might play, something like a One Ring. Here, I think it's totally fine just to throw out a Troll with this Dark Ritual, and then we can fetch up our other Surveil land. And if they play more creatures, we can do a big Meat Hook. Our Troll is big enough to survive that pretty much no matter what. See, like, even Troll would have been more high impact than Grief. Okay, that's a big card for them, but as long as they don't have a way to flip him into the Planeswalker form, then we're okay. Yeah, they'll pay their energy. Okay, so Static Prison's gonna pop. I'm gonna get my Grief back. Okay. I hope that was intentional. Alright, boys. Let's Surveil here. Good old easy bake, right? Anyway, let's take a Surveil. Do I want the Boggart Trawler? Not really. I don't think I need it for anything. I think there's better draws in my deck. Even another land is fine. I think I'm going to go ahead and shock here because that will let me get up to x equals 4, enough to kill the Guide of Souls. But let's attack first. Since we have super menace, we cannot be blocked. And then we'll shock. Big meat hook. Opponent will do perhaps the classic Surveil Concede. Oh, no Surveil lands left in the deck. Another classic. Alright, so we're going to be getting our Grief back after they draw their card, which is pretty hilarious. So if it's a creature, I'm sorry. If it's a removal spell, then you can shoot the Grief with it, I guess. Sure. Good old easy bake, as they say. And then we just have 2-turn lethal with our troll here. I'm going to just play this Grief in case they draw something like a Swords to Plowshares. This is going to be a 2-turn clock. It's got menace, so it should be able to connect and win. Yep. All right, so for game 2 against the Energy Gamers, we're going to want Path. We're going to want the Consuming Corruption. We're going to want the Deluge. We're going to want the Fatal Push. All these cards that look good against Fair. And the Meathook Massacre. And then we generally are taking out unfair cards. So I know the Thoughtseize has definitely come out, and I think Grief's also come out. But like Grief is quite good against them. I do really like being able to Grief scam. I do really like being able to like rip a Johnny out of their hands. So I think we'll go down to like 2 Griefs. We'll trim a Frog. Just because Frog does die to their removal. This is not like one of the matchups where Frog is really an all-star. In fact, like I'm considering keeping all 4 Griefs and just removing copies of Frog. Is that crazy, guys? I don't know. I think we're going to play 2 Griefs, 3 Frogs like this. And you're going to let me know your thoughts. Because we're all trying to figure it out together. Alright, what we got here? We're going to be on the draw against Energy Gaming. We have a cool Psychic Frog that I just said maybe we don't want. But we have a Board Wipe, we have a Consuming Corruption, and we have a Shield Druid. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this. We're just going to start with the Malakir Rebirth tap land, I believe. Unless we get, like, flooded and we start drawing Runner on our land. My opponent just gets the Thoughtseize here, so curious what they're going to take. I don't know. I guess Shieldred. Maybe Meathook. It really depends on what's in their hand, right? They do end up taking Meathook here. It's fine. I think with Consuming Corruption, we can keep the board under check. Also, note here is that Consuming Corruption is not going to hit for that much damage now that I think about it, right? Because Rebirth is going to be a non-swamp land. I think I'm still playing it. It's just something to note. Consuming Corruption is actually not a great removal spell here. Maybe we should redo the mana base a little bit to be slightly less greedy and play a few more swamps. Maybe. I'll think about it. I might just play a Frog here this turn. Like, I'll grab my shock land. Looks like they probably have Bowmasters. Do I care they have Bowmasters? Not really. I'm gonna play my Froggy Boy. If my Froggy Boy just gets removed and they don't add to the board state, then I think I'm also like okay with that outcome, that we got to turn 3 without being behind on board. All right. What you got, opponent? It's one of the surgicals of all time. Definitely one of the surgicals of all time there. Alright, we're gonna get Thoughtseized again. That's a good Thoughtseize for them. It can clear the Shieldred, or maybe they are afraid of Baelmerk. Baelmerk is a card that can do a lot of work against them. If I draw like a Dark Ritual, for example, I'm absolutely gonna slam Baelmerk. Like that card will go hard. They take push. Okay. My opponent's at 9 HP, notably. Ah, Amped Raptor. By the way, in my opinion, little Mardu advice here, when you have a Thoughtseize, which is a card that you use the information you have to make a decision, and then you have a source of randomness like Amped Raptor, you should do the source of randomness first. It'll educate your decision for your thoughtseize, right? Sorry, to a pedantic Mardu player over here who thinks he's smart because he can play the easy bake oven deck. We could go hashtag all in on the frog. Kind of crazy, but like we could think about it. Ooh, another frog. Another frog's pretty cool. Let's play other frog. Oh, we don't have enough material in the graveyard to be jumping. Hmm. I think we're going to go ahead and play the Bilmerk and get a creature back here. We got the troll back. Okay, that's cool. So we can use that to hit our land drop. We did enter the battlefield this turn with the Takenuma, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab Basic Swamp here so that we can play Shieldred next turn. And we're not going to jump our frog. We're just going to keep him back as a blocker. And then next turn, we can either do Consuming Corruption for 2, plus a frog, or we can play Shieldred. We're going to accept that removal spell and take some damage here. Oh, One Ring. Okay, that simplifies the decision-making process. So we are going to activate the One Ring once here. No, we could do it on their end step. We're going to do it once while we have the protection. Oh, this is tough with double Bowmaster down for them, right? Oh, no, Bombardment. That's tough. Now our Consuming Corruption doesn't go anywhere. That's really tough. So maybe I'm not supposed to activate this. I'm thinking about not activating Ring right now. And just using Ring as a protection spell. What's cool about activating Ring now as opposed to later is that Bowmaster can't target me. Yeah, I think we're gonna go to our turn. Gonna go to our turn. Consuming Corruption, again, turned off because of Bombardment. But what we can do is we can go ahead and consume both of the Bowmasters, and now we can One Ring a bunch without any problems. And I think this is going to be the correct play. This game's going to get really tight on life total, though, before we can play the Shieldred, right? Because we're going to go to 8 here. We're going to go to 8, then get knocked to 4, and then 2 off of Bombardment. So we do have to hope that they don't draw anything that helps them on the board state. I think this is a correct navigation of this board state, but I'm not sure. I could have also just slammed a Shieldred and started drawing cards. I'm going to wait until their end step to draw my first card here, because I want to make sure I don't accidentally lethal myself with the 1 extra damage of my upkeep. We want to see them just put Lurrus into their hand here. That's ideal. We don't want to see a creature. We also obviously don't want to see a Thoughtseize. That goes without saying. They are thinking. They might have like a removal spell to hold up. So they will think about doing that. Instead of like putting Lurrus into their hand or something. Static Prison hit my ring. That's troublesome. I will draw my card. Oh, I drew DT. Oh, that's really good. Okay. Oh, Reanimate we can't quite use. Alright, listen up, Buttercups. Let's think. What can this DT do for me? What could it do for me? What would it get out of my deck? It could get something like a Path of Peril. It could get another One Ring, but we can't play that One Ring for a while, and we would just die on board. I think this sucks, but our best play might just be to play Shieldred and hope we go to next turn. We could also do something like play Psychic Frog, DT for One Ring. Actually, no, we're just dead, right? Are we just dead? Because they can hit us for 2 in combat. And then ping us with Goblin Bombardment. Even if I DT for something like a Orcish Bowmasters to like remove this, they have Bombardment in play. And Bombardment's just super powerful. I'm trying to think if I have an out here. I don't think I do, right? DT for Fatal Push, they would hit me for 4 total, right? Because 2 pings and 2 damage in combat. I play a Psychic Frog. Same shit. Reanimate? Actually, any Reanimators? You have a Guide of Souls I can reanimate? No, you do have a Bowmasters I can reanimate. Yeah, I think they have us. I'll watch this game back and see if I made any mistakes in the sequencing there. Did I? I don't know. We were put in a tricky situation with two bowmasters on the board, right? Nice and tricky. I think we're gonna go ahead and keep this sideboarding as is. Frog's pretty good. I think Frog's better than Grief, guys. We're gonna go ahead and play it like this. It does kind of suck to not have hand hate because a card like Goblin Bombardment is something that I would like to remove before it enters the battlefield. Because it's probably the best card in their deck against me, right? But when I'm on the play, I think these frogs are going to be pretty nasty. All right, we're going to be on the play against Lurrus Energy. They get a Grief. We have One Ring, Shieldred, and Meathook. I think we are pretty inclined to keep this hand, even if we don't have a way to accelerate towards the One Ring. I think we're going to keep this. We also don't have cheap removal, which is another like point of concern for me. Let's surveil here. We're just going to try to hit land drops or hit acceleration or hit cheap removal. So we're going to keep that. I might want to just evoke Grief. I'm going to think about it. Just to like take a look at their hand. What's really cool is we can buy back an evoked Grief with Bailmerk. Oh yeah, take a look at my hand. I think we're just going to play Bailmerk next turn. There's a small argument that like maybe I would want to evoke Grief before. Oh, they take my Grief. Okay, never mind. I don't think this is a valuable card in the matchup, but again, I could be wrong. Like, this is a new deck and we're working on it, right? We're going to cast with Impending. We're going to buy back the Grief. And then the question is, do I Grief them? Like, right now, pitching Meathook? I think, like, Meathook and Shieldred are both more valuable than me discarding a random card. So I think I'm going to hold on to my Grief. Goblin Bombardment and a Johnny would make me regret that. But what's neat about Ajani Bombardment is they can't play both of them in one turn. So we can let them play the Ajani first, then like Grief them. And take Bombardment out of their hand. Or they could play Bombardment first, but that would be very slow. And I would have more time to work towards the One Ring, right? And if they do have like that hand that's stacked with the Ajani Bombardment, there is a fair amount of thinking for them to do on what order the Easy Bake Oven gets activated in. Okay. Grief? I mean, maybe they'll peddle my Grief. I would take it, honestly. I think Grief is my least valuable card in hand. I went with Meathook instead. That's fine. Ooh, Dark Ritual, Ring. Fantastic. We just do it, right? Hard to say no to this. They could have a removal spell for it, but I don't really mind. Let's go ahead and play the Ring. Activate this. We have protection from everything. We drew another board wipe. Life is good. Life is great, in fact. I would love to draw a land so that we can go ahead and just play Shieldred and gain a zillion life. Guide of Souls. Alright, the oven is doing its thing. No attacks, of course. Give me a Surveil. Alright, Bloodstained Mire. Actually, no, wait. I just said I wanted to keep land drops. What am I doing? Sorry, always bottom lands, LSV quote, okay? Every time I see a land when I scry or surveil, you hear the voices in your head telling you to bin it. Throw down Shieldred, draw some cards. I could also just, like, cast the Path here. I also could Grief him. But I think it's hard to say no to Shieldred, gain 4 life. Force my opponent to use a removal spell, and then we will, yeah, big Meathook maybe. I'm actually gonna Grief him. I think this is correct. I don't think the Bowmasters is huge here. Let's Grief. Yeah, ooh, a Johnny Bombardment, buddy. I'm taking that Bombardment. Alright, well, I was right about them having a Johnny Bombardment in their hand and having to think about their sequencing, which is funny. So my opponent can do one of the things. They will give me 4 more life, which is nice. They did it before they lost life. Okay, that's fine. And then I will probably Meathook on 2 here. Draw a few more cards. Yep, that's another one for later. We're going to Meathook on 2. I'm going to go ahead, cycle this, right? Grab our 5th land drop, just make sure we keep hitting those lands. We have another Ring in hand and a Consuming Corruption, so I'm like really not afraid of life loss. We're also going to gain 3 here. My opponent wishing they could surgical this once more. I think when you surgical extraction a card, it should be gone for the whole best of 3. What about you guys? I'm kidding. Alright, Amped Raptor, go. Hit Swords to Plowshares, please. Ah, removal spell for Ring. That's cool with me. I think we just play our other Ring. We could even take a turn off of Ringing and just like play Psychic Frog here. Because we actually don't have mana for all of it. The only problem with that is that I do want to encourage them to like play their Ajani out. We could like start trying to win off of this Psychic Frog. Or maybe it just eats a removal spell. I'm overthinking things. I think we should just play another Ring. Ooh, reanimate. I think we reanimate. Shelly is dead. We can't reanimate Shelly. They give up. Okay, sweet. What was the correct reanimation target there, guys? I always like to think about these things because this is still like a somewhat new gameplay experience, this deck. I have in the past reanimated my opponent's Guide of Souls, which is very funny. We got to keep in mind I have another board wipe, so I was thinking that maybe reanimate Troll is correct. Actually, reanimate Grief for a Chthonian Nightmare. Because Chthonian Nightmare is going to let them flip their Ajani. It's also going to let them recur their annoying cards. These are all this card, both very, very, very annoying here. All right, I'm gonna wrap up the video after just these 2 games, by the way, because we played the 2 best decks in the format. Fantastic. We played against both Mardu and Show and Tell, and we actually beat Show and Tell, which is not something that I was expecting to do. I do want people's thoughts on this deck. I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take Stonebrain out. I think this card's a punt. I think this card is not it. I'm going to try 3 surgicals. Am I crazy? Like, am I a psycho for liking this? Right? Like, am I crazy for having 3 surgicals, 3 disruptor flutes in my sideboard? Or is that just like the current state of Timeless? Other cards, Invasive. This is a cool one. I'm like an inch away from playing this against Show and Tell, but the thing is, I don't want to lose to the card Veil of Summer even harder than I already am. Which is why we're not playing Vexing Bauble, because Veil of Summer just turns that card off. It also turns off my discard. The idea with discard is to force them to use the Veil of Summer early, right? So you just hit a critical density of discard where you're going to have more discard than they're going to have Veils. Yeah, I'm very open to suggestions with the deck, especially the sideboard. Very open to your ideas of what the game plan should be against Show and Tell. Of course, open to changing the whole deck. Like, there are people who are playing with Necro in the 3-drop slot here, the non-existent 3-drop column that only has a Boggart Trawler. I mean, I'm open to ideas, open to suggestions. I do think what I have is, at least in my personal opinion, better than what I've seen other people play with in Discord, but that's just my opinion. I'm very biased because like I played Shieldred One Ring a lot in the past, so I think it's good. And I'm very familiar with the play patterns, right? So I'm going to do better when I'm playing a list that I'm familiar with. But if you put up some really good results with Necro at me, let me know. And I'll definitely be playing more of this deck because this is super fun. Psychic Frog is a busted card, confirmed.